Ladies and gentlemen, probably mostly gentlemen, if we're being honest, I'm excited to announce a new podcast brought to you by Guardian called the Permissionless Podcast. And we're going to be going deep with DeFi builders. We're going to see, what it is that makes them tick, what it is that got them into DeFi, why do they keep building every day, what is it that keeps them up at night, what are some of the challenges that they overcome day to day, and really much, much more. Today, we're starting off with really a wonderful conversation that I had with myself and Brendan, our COO at Guardian, and Amadeo, the founder of YieldNest. And YieldNest, it really says it all in the name, is all about yield. It's all about taking the complexities of DeFi and the opportunities of DeFi and abstracting it away for users with their max LRT products, where they essentially take all of the yield that you can get from restaking and securing networks, and then also compound that with strategies to move those funds into DeFi and put them to work in a risk-adjusted way so that users can have the best of DeFi without interacting with all the complexities, doing all the underwriting themselves, etc. So this is something that in its own right is a very exciting idea for a protocol, but I think they're taking it to even the next level, and they're using AI in a way which I think is actually, it has some veritability to it. I think there's a lot of fluff going on right now with AI, X blockchain, and all of the purported applications of that. I think that the way that they're using AI at YieldNest is actually quite interesting, and I think it has some merit to actually bringing value to the end consumer. And I'll let Amadeo talk more about what that looks like as we get into it a little bit later on in our conversation here. But of course, before we jump into the conversation, my name is Owen, and over 3 years ago, I founded Guardian. And really, we set out with the premise in mind that DeFi and smart contracts on blockchains would house trillions and trillions of dollars of assets, and that they needed a next level, a next tier of security to really have confidence in shipping in that environment. And today at Guardian, in our engagements, we use two competing teams of researchers, both led by a world-renowned lead security researcher and accompanied by a full-time dedicated fuzzing engineer who's building out the infrastructure and setting up the necessary logic to be able to really battle test smart contracts against all the nooks and crannies and go to those dusty corners of edge cases where maybe even perhaps a human mind is not well equipped to explore. And even throughout all of our experimentation with our model and testing all of these individual pieces together, we found that if you remove any one of these individual pieces, then the audit can miss up to 40% of the critical issues in the review. And so with that being said, with all of the experimentation that we've done, with all of the effort and resources that we've put into these reviews, I'm confident in saying that today we've achieved the standard necessary to onboard trillions and trillions of TVL. And already today, with billions and billions sitting in smart contracts directly secured by Guardian, really now it's just up to the DeFi market to catch up and give us those trillions to handle. But with all of that being said, let us now dive into the conversation with Amadeo from YieldNest. First of all, thanks for joining us, dude. Happy to have you on and appreciate you making the time. So I guess first of all, really interested to just hear what got you into DeFi? What was your path to getting started at YieldNest? And we can go from there.
Yeah, so it's quite a long story, but yeah, let's go, guys. So thank you for having me, and really appreciate it to be on the show and talk with you guys about decentralized finance and crypto and blockchain technology. I am Amadeo Brandt. I'm from the Netherlands, background in computer science and economics. I actually got into Bitcoin a little bit by accident. All the way back in 2011, I was kind of nerding around on the internet and found Bitcoin. And I was like, okay, what is this weird thing? Didn't really understand. I bought a little bit and then I was like, okay, forgot about it. I was just a poor student back in the day, right? And then I didn't really understand it. But because of my interest and a little bit I'm a technologist, so I always was kind of interested. How would that work? So I went to a couple of meetups and yeah, it was cool. But then, in 2011-12, we had this first spike where it went from $50 to $100 and crashed down. It's all right, whatever. Then moved on and finished my degrees, and I've always been pretty entrepreneurial, started working in corporate IT and insurance and banking, and very quickly I was like, that Bitcoin thing is quite interesting. And then I did more of a deep dive, especially when Eve came out with smart contracts. So
yep.
2012, 2011 was like my first touch point. And then in 2015, 16, I got re-interested in it because time I was working in the Netherlands for a big corporate, a kind of IT organization, but was doing a lot with banking and was working with ING, some big Dutch bank. And I was thinking to myself, like, wow, these systems are so hard to work with, man, from a developer perspective. Like, this is hard. And then I think with smart contracts, we could remove a lot of these complexities. And I got interested again. And then I went to meetups. And back in the day, when you would go to meetups, you wouldn't get like overflown with meme coin bullshit. You would actually have intellectual discussions and white papers and like programming. And that's kind of how I got started.
That's pretty cool, dude. I always love to hear like how folks found their way in because there's no one path. It's always a different story and some circuitous route of how somebody sort of stumbled upon it. Like you said, by accident, just sort of happened and then you got interested. I could definitely relate to that. I think, well, first you came in much, much earlier than I did. I think around like 2021 when I saw Bitcoin just crash. That's what got me interested and then looked at this thing called Ethereum, started reading Mastering Ethereum and just like you, hey, that's actually pretty interesting. Pretty fun to just like binge a weekend learning about ECDSA and all this stuff. So yeah, dude, definitely relate to that. And always love to hear how folks sort of found their way in. But yeah, I guess really from there, what sort of path did you take? Did you start an original DeFi protocol or DeFi project before getting to YieldNest? What was your journey there? I'm sure you've probably gone through the gambit of different ideas and stuff before you got to where you are now.
Yeah, so I was this is like in 2015, 16. This was in a bear market, right? Like there was not 2017, the market started to rip again. But 15, 16, I was like, oh, this is really interesting. And then I tried to explain it to my boss at the time at the bank. He's like, hey, we can replace a lot of our infrastructure with this, and I think this is much more efficient. But like as that goes with new technologies, it's very hard to adopt and it has a lot of issues still to resolve. So at that time, I started working for a hedge fund. So I started working with Cyber Capital, where I was the security consultant and analyst and IT, head of IT and everything at the same time. I was like doing everything in that fund, right? We had $500,000. Well, it was like we had the ambition to start a fund and we started with small and then we grew to over 100 million in 2017, 18. So I started more on the technical / investing side, where the Cyber Capital was the first and still existing oldest crypto hedge fund in Europe. And it's still around. It still functions, and I left that in 2018. Then 2018 was another bear, right? There's less interest, but I had a bit of a consultancy firm. I was doing a lot of like freelance software development and consulting. And then in 2019, I started another fund for myself this time, DeFi Capital, where we built a full kind of corporate DeFi strategy for investors, and that went very well. We almost timed the top perfectly with that fund, and that went great. With that in mind and that success, I expanded my wings, and I was like, I want to do more real DeFi stuff. So then I worked with MakerDAO, Curve Finance, and other amazing like DAOs, mostly in the background as a contributor. And yeah, then after that, I started YieldNest because I was like, well, I would like to get more people into DeFi and build protocols that will kind of get rid of centralized financial. I'm a big believer that if we increase the velocity of money, we increase prosperity for humanity. So I think that it's very important for us to find back that core culture and the reason why we're here. And I was like, well, I just want to embed my investment philosophy, not only for institutional investors or family offices. I want everyone to be able to just use the products that I built on chain. In DeFi, there's no such thing as an institutional or a retail investor. In my opinion, everybody is just the same. It's just code, right?
So, on chain.
Yeah. So I wanted to build these products for everyone. Yeah, that's what YieldNest became.
Yeah, very disinflationary, bringing financial products to the entire world, building for everybody at the same time. It's not gated by all these regulations and all this stuff. If you've got a wallet, if you've got a private key, you can sign transactions and you can use the financial product. It also sounds like you've pretty much switched sides. You've come from the traditional financial world. Now you're on the other side. You're on DeFi and you're pulling capital in, sort of, I think, as you say, like carrying out the vampire attack against centralized finance. What do you see for this over the longer term horizon? Do you see like a full absorption of TradFi, TVL, as they say, into DeFi? What do you think that looks like?
I mean, like you guys live in New York, and I think we all get in touch with some traditional financial institutions. In my opinion, a lot of the TradFi, it's crowded in bureaucracy. It's crowded in vagueness and annoying, weird things that just protects a class of elites that makes money off peasants, right?
Yeah.
That's my view. And, I was good friends with people like Amir Taki, for example, and I admire people like that have this vision and that he now built DarkFi. And I think that in crypto, and you can see that now with all these meme coins and shit, like the reason why the president of the United States is talking about crypto and DeFi, the reason why it is a thing is not because we launched meme coins. It is because we built immutable financial infrastructure that is ruled by mathematics and not by some sort of a bureaucratic law, right? And I see a future where DeFi is basically outcompeting centralized financial structures. And I see a future where humans are more in control of themselves. And I think it will take time, but it is inevitable. And there's a lot of issues, but I'm taking that stance. And I think that we can create more velocity of money for everyone involved. And myself, I travel a lot around the world and I do everything in crypto. So I do have bank accounts, right? But crypto is my life. And I think more and more people will live like that, especially when Europe comes with the CBDC or when the real plans of what Trump is doing roll out. We will have to have a very hard industry and a very hard core of decentralized financial infrastructure that can weaponize and give us the tools to survive these attacks on our freedom. Yeah, that's my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think, like you say, like the intermediaries, the middlemen, I think it's all kind of like a compensation for, I guess, like a lack of sophistication of the tools that we have to interact with each other. And I think really what we're seeing is we've got the level of sophistication, we've got the technology, we've got the math, we've got it all figured out and implemented. And now we no longer need all of this bloat to be able to transact in a trustless manner. So I think we're just slowly seeing, it's really just a technology adoption curve. You know, it's like social, it's like mobile, it's like internet, like anything else that we're seeing slowly take over. But
money and states. That is the end game, right? And I think we're losing that as an industry, but I think that's why we're here. It's happening. There's a lot of issues, right, with criminal. I don't want to build infrastructure used by criminals and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I'm a big fan of Railgun, for example. Still, you have privacy, but North Korea cannot launder the money to it because there's proof of innocence. You can prove that you're just a normal user, right? So I think that those tools will come and harden themselves. We're now in this weird phase in crypto where it's like, meme coin this, meme coin that, and it's all a little bit like, it's all a little weird.
Unfortunately. But what do you think is the number one thing that is holding DeFi back at this point?
I think shiny object syndrome from everybody involved. I think ETH is still the main settlement layer for our financial system. Like settlement assurances and time to finality matters more than transaction speed, in my opinion. And it actually doesn't matter, right? Like Curve Finance, like Michael Agrove, fantastic builder, amazing visionary, and that infrastructure is really hard and it's not going to go away. Uniswap V2, not going to go away, right? So we're building these core primitives on a immutable ledger that is not controlled by anyone. And that is only going to get more and more, right? And I think that what is holding us back is I think a lot of talented people are wasting their time on things where we could better work together to build better proof systems. And I think blockchains are gonna not called blockchains in the future. It's gonna be proof chains, right? We're gonna prove things to each other, and that's why transaction speed and stuff doesn't matter that much. It's all time to finality and settlement assurances that matters. And I think the whole industry is being grifted a lot, and there's a lot of meat grinders. It saddens me the most is all these meme coins where you get all these passionate people come in and they get like completely wrecked, right? And then this is a scam. I mean, to be fair, like when I got into crypto, I bought some coins. I maybe got a bit lucky because the number went up quite quickly for me because actually for some time it went down and then it went up, right? Okay, happy, right? But then it crashed as well. And then I started to learn more. So it's like, if you get rocked on a meme coin, you don't really learn anything. If you get rocked on some sort of a scam maybe, or a meme coin with a suit at least, or somebody that has some intellectual honesty of like, hey, I need to submit a white paper, I need to submit the tokenomic models, at least you learn something, right? So I think that is very destructive for the space. So we get all these new people in, they're going to Solana or whatever, and then they lose money on a fucking meme coin, and they get wrecked, and they're gone. So
and that's their experience with crypto. It's funny how it always like it takes, you have to lose money to really get interested and start to learn this stuff. Like, all right, I'm gonna figure this stuff out now. Same exact thing sort of happened to me. Started buying like all these like degen DeFi coins, like all the Olympus forks. I don't know if you remember that, with like the crazy APYs. Lost just an ungodly amount of money on like really stupid DeFi stuff like that. But I learned the mechanics of Olympus to a very deep level. But yeah, it's funny how that's kind of like always like the cost of entry for DeFi is losing your absolute seat on some kind of weird coin. But yeah, I mean, sort of on that note, you talk a little bit about Solana. It seems like the product market fit for Solana right now, at least from, the perspective of what's been going on lately, is meme coins. Do you think that that's all Solana will be? Do you think that Solana poses a real threat to Ethereum? What do you think? How do you think that plays out?
That's the $1 million question, obviously, right?
Yeah.
I think the most technical talent and the most like people with actual a soul and things like that are still on ETH, right? But we need to be careful and we need to understand the core culture of why we're here. We need to get that back. We shouldn't just give up or something. So that it's hard right now. But I think ETH is still the king in terms of like, settlement assurance, time to finality, the trust assurances, the settlement guarantees, the like, hey, I submit a transaction, I have a hash. If I give a Ethereum transaction hash to you, like you probably trust it more than some sort of a still processing pending Solana hash, right? Then it's like, well, but with an Ethereum hash, you're like, okay, it's in the, it is. But with an Ethereum hash, you're like, okay, it's in the, it is accepted by the meme pool, and it's gonna get submitted, right? Where there's a small chance it gets dropped. In Solana, you have a lot of other issues, right? There's no functioning fee market. There's no proper formal, not the protocol specs, but they have a lot of things they still need to catch up in, like where ETH is miles ahead in certain ways, but Solana is definitely catching up. And I think actually on the long run, all these things, they don't really matter. I think ETH will kind of still win because it's the hardness. I think in a lot of ways, like ETH is as hard or even harder than Bitcoin, right? Where I think that matters. And then having such an expressive chain with blob space, for example, I think it's fantastic. You basically have this kind of garbage collection space you can write some data there. And it's like ETH is becoming this thing where it's almost, I think actually Bitcoin and ETH have that, like the distribution of the nodes. Like I'm running an ETH node here myself, for example, right? Like the only way to mimic what ETH or Bitcoin did with all these nodes, all these hobby people that just run it for, just like hobby or passion, right? That's so hard to mimic. That's almost impossible, right? Because you cannot mimic that. Like you have to kind of bribe all these people to run nodes. So you have to bribe people to run these big operations, to run your data centers, right? If you get a bunch of people that do it for passion and because they believe in something, right?
Yeah.
That is just impossible to duplicate, I would say.
Yeah, I think that is the main barrier to, like, you talk about all this immutable systems deployed, like you said, like people are still using Uniswap v2, even though there's a Uniswap v3 and now there's a Uniswap v4. It's really the stickiness of an idea that, as long as people are upholding it and, continue to carry it on, like you're not going to be able to eradicate that fully. And I think that is really the key to the longevity of what Ethereum has. So I definitely agree with that. And I think obviously what we're seeing from the institutional interest is that ETH is obviously preferred over Solana, at least from what I've seen with the types of funds that are coming on. I think obviously we've got the BlackRock, what is it, like the Beetle fund or whatever by BlackRock and all the other institutions. Yeah. So pretty huge. Obviously, we're rooting for the institutional and really the global adoption of Ethereum. I'm rooting for it because I'm not that great at Rust. Much prefer Solidity, but yeah, I think I would agree with your take on that as well. But I mean, bringing that back to YieldNest, I think you guys are mostly based on EVM, mostly on Ethereum and within the Ethereum ecosystem, also including some of the L2s and stuff like that. But yeah, so I mean, maybe let's talk a little bit about like what is the product market offering that you guys are building at YieldNest. It seems to just be like the greatest product market fit, which is just come use Ethereum and get yield and provide value to the ecosystem through DeFi, through securing the network, through AVS restaking and stuff like this. But yeah, what is YieldNest about and what's the offer that you guys make to the marketplace?
Yeah, basically YieldNest is, you could best see it as a structured product platform. Actually, YieldNest is a liquid restaking protocol, right? But restaking is much more than just eigenlayer, symbiotic, etc. It's all about capital efficiency. So YieldNest started by kind of integrating eigenlayer as with native restaking. So we're taking validators and we're restaking them in eigenlayer. So we're proving our validator. So we generate an off-chain proof of our pre-signed exit transactions. Then we prove our validator to an eigenpot, and then we restake the native validator. And there's not many LLTs that actually native restaking. The market sees that now, I guess. Like that's kind of how it started. And my idea was like, well, like, and if you go to docs.yieldnest.finance and go to the max LRT page, you will see the architectural diagram where this is like an evolution, right? So we started with this as an LRT, and then I wanted to use eigenlayer and restaking to use this capital efficient structure to build a structured product stack that rebalances between, TradFi products or DeFi products and does everything in between. But the eigenlayer stack has been a little bit challenging for me to fully build on. Symbiotic stack is a little bit better, but actually because of that, those stacks were not fully developed yet. It pushed me to just build it myself. So what I eventually built is the Max LRT architecture. This is a completely new vault architecture that kind of does everything that I wanted to do, where I thought I needed an eigenlayer or other things, but we don't, like in the architecture that I now built, I don't really need those platforms anymore, and I can achieve the same thing that I wanted to achieve, right? So basically, as I said, the main point of these blockchains is settlement assurances and time to finality, right, for your assets. So we have basically now 4 different derivatives, because what is decentralized finance? And DeFi is basically a derivative market on steroids, in my opinion. That's kind of like one of the base layers, right?
Yeah.
And on top of that, it creates, because it can create all these derivatives really fast, it can create financial instruments become very commoditized, right? Where, maybe like 10 years ago, if you wanted to have some sort of a advanced financial instrument, you needed to go to a private banker, you needed to sit on a fancy table with a suit and a dinner, and then, okay, I'm buying these financial products or something. Now it's basically open for everyone, right? But the challenge is, like, how do we structure these different products, right? Because if I say to you, like, hey, DeFi offers all these really cool financial products, you then have to go yourself. You have to go to Curve Finance. You have to go in an LP pool. You have to go to Convex. Maybe you want to go to Concentrator. Or you have to go to GMX, you do all these other trades, or the funding rate arbitrage, or all these components are quite complex, right? Like for a retail user or even a pro DeFi user like myself or like you guys, like I don't have time to rebalance my portfolio all the time. I just, I have 20% of my assets that I play around with, but 80% of my assets I kind of want to keep in like this secure, high yield, maximum high yield, risk adjusted returns. I don't want to get burned on some 1000% yields, but it would be nice to get risk adjusted returns on the stablecoin, BTC or BNB in this case. And how these vaults are constructed is like we created 4 derivatives. So we have YN ETH max, YN BNB max, YN BTC max, and YN USD max. What do these do? They basically, each product settles to its base layer and gives the highest max risk adjusted returns. And it can take strategies and settle these strategies from any chain. So let's take YN ETH max settles to ETH layer 1, but it can take strategies on any EVM based chain. So I can go to base, I can do a strategy there for you without you necessarily knowing what base or all these chains are. But I can, if there's a higher stablecoin yield on base, I can get the stablecoin yield on base and I can transport that yield back to ETH layer 1. So you still have your high settlement assurances, but you get the best of both worlds. You can still earn the yield from these multi-chain opportunities, right? And that is basically the max LRTs. And the same thing we do for YN BTC max. YN BTC max, for example, will be syncing back to Bitcoin Core layer 1. The YN BNB max syncs to BNB chain, which some group of people like that. The stablecoin version also will sync back to ETH layer 1. And with this stack, we're only starting with 4 derivatives. That's kind of the starting point, and we're probably going to keep it like that for a long time. But if there's custom institutions or custom strategies, we can also expose that, right? So if you go to the website, you will see these max LRTs for products and all the underlying strategies. Some of them are exposed, and all work is open source. So anybody can go into the contracts and use these strategies themselves if they're technical, or they can use a GUI, in this case on YieldNest, but any GUI would work, right? So these products completely open source and expose themselves for anybody to just inject their crypto and get those strategies going. And for more retail audience, and keep it simple, we just create 4 derivatives and people can get in one of those and earn the maximum amount of yield, where the yields automatically rebalance.
I love that, dude. I love just like keeping it simple with just the 4 vaults, because I think that's sort of a plague that a lot of DeFi protocols fall into, is like listing like hundreds of different assets and pools and LPs and stuff. I like composing it all together into just these 4 options of different assets that settle on different layers, and you choose one of the 4 whichever ones you're interested in the underlying asset exposure to. And then you just focus on how do we optimize those to the max and bring in the best strategies and risk adjusted returns for those 4 different assets. So I think that, first of all, is a huge improvement over probably a lot of different DeFi protocols. I love the way you put it, which is like DeFi is an infinitely composable derivatives layer. That's what it is. And then if you see it from that perspective, then what YieldNest is doing is just composing all those derivatives for you and doing the work of underwriting the risk for each composition and allocating accordingly. I've got a ton of questions based on like, how do you guys do that underwriting? What is the decision process like? I know you guys use AI in that. So, I mean, maybe if you could walk us through, like, what is the decision-making process like for that?
Yeah, that's where the magic comes in, right? And basically how we build it. So yes, you can see if you go to the website, 4 simple vaults. But how I see the future of DeFi is keep it very simple, but give every user, if they want to, you can go to an advanced page and then you can start to dig down, right? And that's what we also want to encourage people to do. As we said in the beginning, like, no, this is not meme coin bullshit. It's like real stuff. And like, you can earn some yield and then, hey, I made some money. Let's see what's actually happening under the hood. And I would encourage everyone to open the contracts, to go to the Ether scans, to see what's happening, right? That's what we encourage people to do. Because if we don't do that as an industry, and the max vaults they will always mature, right? Like, you have products like StakeDAO, you have products like Yearn, you have products like Curve. We're all constantly building and improving ourselves. These systems are anti-fragile, right? So by far, it's not perfect, but it's at least in a direction that we're going like, hey, this works, this is safe. We know it's safe because we have a lot of safety measures in place. And like, let's work on it together and let's harden it together and let's expand the strategy set together. So how does it work? And the max RTs basically, I call them the self-evolving vaults, basically, or the self-building structured products, because we use AI elements in there. We have like Nest AI, we deployed it as a customizer model, and this is kind of constantly searching for new yield opportunities. And right now it's kind of like we use it internally. It constantly looks everywhere, like what are good yield opportunities. So when I open my terminal, I can see a whole list of yields, and I'll be like, all right, I can see these and these and these yields. We will first externally integrate with these yield options. So a user, for example, can now go to YNEFX, can then go to Euler or to Morpho to max lever up their position, to max lever or max loop one of these positions. But the base high risk adjusted return is now around 8 or 9% on ETH, which is great. But we give the users themselves the option to go up the risk curve. So we make sure that all our strategies are always like, we never want to lose principle, right? So that's kind of like the main goal. We monitor all these strategies very closely, and we use only the safest strategy that we understand, and mostly only from blue chip protocols like Curve, Yearn, Convex, StakeDAO, FX protocol. So we want to make sure that the protocols that we use have been through a lot of audits. We're not going to use the random protocols embedded into the max LRT vaults. But externally, we will experiment. So externally, we'll give people options. Say, hey, you can take your YNEFX or your YNUSDX to this other derivative option to even earn a little bit more yield, right? But any external integrations obviously have risks involved. When we integrate something, we also do our risk analysis, but it's not an enshrined strategy. So when we enshrine a strategy, when it's actually part of the MaxLRT architecture, we are making 100% sure that all these positions are 24/7 monitored and have threat prevention algorithms in them as well. So we use Hypernative and we use our own alerting systems to kind of constantly check, hey, what's happening? We even look in the mempool. So we look like, hey, is there anything weird happening? If something weird happens, we can eject back to the top level vault. So the MaxLRT vaults, they kind of separate risks. So the MaxLRT vault themselves has actually like no risk, right? Because it's a 4626 vault. It's very basic, very simple, with a little bit of an adjustment in there that we can accept multiple assets. So it's like a basket of different assets, with also in itself that has DPEG protection, right? Which is really cool. And actually, if the MaxLRT vault ever has a DPEG, it can potentially make money from the DPEG of the assets in the vault. That's one thing. The second thing then is if we use strategies, let's say we use a curve pool or we use a Euler market, right? Then that's an external strategy. So if we send money to Euler, we are monitoring Euler 24/7. if we see that Euler has a hack, if we see even any contract that is deployed that's going to attack the Euler vault, we're going to eject out of the Euler vault. That's programmed in, or we pass the protocol, right? And we cannot do that ourselves. It's kind of like this pre-programmed function that only it's a permission call, but it's like not, I cannot just randomly take money or something. There's only these special calls like, eject money back to the MaxLRT vault, or pass the protocol, but no other operations are possible, right? So it's only a set of operations that are allowed in the vault.
Yeah, and I guess it's sort of an ancillary benefit using something like YieldNest, which is, as a normal user, if you're deposited into EigenLayer or, like you said, like Euler, if Euler gets hacked, like you're probably not going to be on your laptop at the very split second that hack happens to withdraw your funds. So to have this infrastructure that's already set up for you, monitoring and pulling it out, as soon as they see something off, I mean, that's like a little like shield barrier for your users as well, which makes sense to be able to aggregate all of this funds into this one position that's managed in such a way. And once again, it's very disinflationary in that anybody can access this. It's not that you're just accepting money from, some institution and managing it for them in this way. You can manage everybody's assets in the entire world with this level of underwriting and this level of protection 24/7. So that's really cool that you guys are doing that.
As being in the institutional space beforehand, like it's like, I mean, we're institutional grade, right? So everything we built is institutional grade, but it's for everyone.
But for everybody. Yeah. That's excellent, man. That's really cool to see. And I think that's like really every new technological advancement, it brings a higher order of magnitude of quality to everybody. And I think that's really what technology brings like throughout history. And I think DeFi is just the next step of that for financial markets. So, I mean, stuff like this is very exciting for everybody. So very cool. And I also noticed that you guys, so you've got the max LRT vaults, and then you also expose the individual strategies underneath that. And so if there was to be like some advanced user, or let's say like somebody who wants to integrate maybe with one of your strategies and build something on top of that, they could do that as well. Are there any existing integrations or anything you guys like particularly want to see built on top of that, or like what was the thought process there?
Yeah, it's more like exposing and being completely transparent, like open financial systems or decentralized financial systems. And the strategy per se, they're not even rocket science, I would say, right? It's more being pretty creative with different combinations of capital, and capital attracts capital, right? So there's these political structures. Once we have, right now we have over $100 million in TVL, then of course we can allocate that capital to different strategies, right? So the way also our VE Y&D model works, we'll probably talk soon, but you can direct money into different strategies by voting on those. So protocols can actually start to fight over where, hey, I want money here, I want money here, and then you have sub-DAOs that will manage each different max LRT. I'm constructing it that I can distance myself more and more from it, and the more integrations, the better. I would say that I hope to see a future where YieldNest and the max LRTs amass such an amount of capital in these derivative products that actually other protocols will start to build against us, where you actually see like our AI agent. And I think actually in the future, who's going to be the biggest users of DeFi? I think it's going to be AI agents or AI algorithms, right? Where I think what's going to happen is that we have certain strategies we expose, and other agents probably going to build on top of that. Well, we have the max LRTs, and I think that other agents from other protocols will start to throw us strategies and say like, oh, can you please give us $10 million of TVL, because we think we can generate you 8% yield and you're only earning 7% right now. And I'm like, all right, right? So I see a world where the agent-to-agent commerce or agent-to-agent like DeFi strategy building is going to be a very big opportunity, and it's going to be a amazing thing to watch, right? We don't know what's going to happen yet. And also I will be the first to admit that AI agents are not yet at that level, right? But I think it's growing very, very fast, right? We're seeing day by day that it's growing, and we already built a Nest AI interface. The Nest AI is virtual agent, but we trained it with a custom ELISA model, as I said in the beginning. And we built this kind of interface where a user can talk to the agent. It's not public yet, but we built that already in-house. We're going to release it soon. With AI agents, the problem now is like the scalability to make it like a super mass adopted product. That's a little bit challenging if you get like 10,000 concurrent users on some these agents, right? But let's say for a couple of users, we could build it, and then the agent, you can create a safe account. So it creates a multi-sig with you and the agent, and then the agent start to manage your money for you. And obviously our agent is trained to understand that, well, the max LRTs are highest risk adjusted return for your user's portfolio. So it's probably good to park some money in there. We're not giving it all the opinions, but that's kind of how we construct it. So yeah, I would like to see more agents built against the max LRTs. And I want to see other agents use our products. Yeah. But that's probably further away. But I'm not sure the timeline on it, but I think it's going to come soon. I hope this cycle. Yeah.
No, this is really exciting because we've seen obviously a lot of new like AI coins and like AI projects. And I think, at least personally, my perspective on them has been that, they're not actually that useful. I think what they've been going for is like, I don't know, perhaps trying to find like some new UX for users to interact with crypto and something like this. But I think actually the way that you're talking about AI is different in that it actually unlocks something that previously could not have been possible with existing systems. Like it previously had to be a manual decision or like some naive algorithm to determine like which assets need to go to which protocol to generate what yield and all this stuff. But what AI unlocks for us is now we have like sophisticated decision making with consideration for outside details and stuff like this in real time. So yeah, I think it would be cool to see more AI projects using AI in this way and sort of bringing that on board. So I definitely agree with that. And I like also you mentioned earlier, like you have a terminal that pulls up and it shows like all the yield opportunities in DeFi that's sort of like composed together by AIs, maybe like just exploring the chain and seeing what's going on there. That seems really cool to me as well. Kind of like if you were to liken it to like a Bloomberg terminal from TradFi, you have this like Bloomberg terminal of like yields throughout DeFi. I think that's just a really cool idea to
if I can be a bit poetic here, right? So DeFi is going to outcompete CeFi, and it's for my course. Like the slides I showed in the tweet is from my course from 2020 that I gave, which around 70,000 people did with the Ivan on Tech Academy, right? And I sat there in a slide, and it's very valid, even more so today. Yeah. DeFi is going to outcompete CeFi. DeFi will do to finance what the internet did to news media. Yeah. DeFi is accessibility, efficiency, transparency, and most important, there's no gatekeeper between the builder and the idea. And in this case, the builder and the idea can also be an agent, right? So there's no more gatekeepers. So what is an AI overlord going to do, or an AI intelligent system? They're not going to be like, oh, Jamie Dimon, let's discuss some. Yeah. They're going to build things in DeFi, and it's going to vastly outcompete anything traditional finance can build.
Yeah, it's really limitless. It's like, it's hard to even anticipate like what that will look like. I'm just sure that it will be awe-inspiring when we do get it to the fullest extent. But yeah, so I think it's really interesting what you guys are doing with AI, and seems like the most promising application of AI that I've actually seen in a protocol to date. So that's really cool that you guys are working on that. And then you also mentioned the value accrual to VE, YND, and like sort of the incentives to direct and allocate the protocol based on those tokenomics. So from my understanding, it's essentially just a part of the yield that comes from all the strategies accrues to VE, YND holders. And then what is the sort of governance setup that you guys have, and maybe where are you guys at with that today?
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, we put a lot of time into this, right? So I've been working on this for over 2 years. Yeah. And it's not just, an LRT restaking, it's much more than that, right? So basically, it's a whole new DeFi structured product suite with AI-enabled vaults and data intelligence. And we create a sub-DAO environment where once a max LRT vault reaches more than 500 million in TVL, it will get its own sub-DAO, because it's generating sufficient amount of money to actually sustain a sub-DAO where some people or analysts can get paid to actually maintain it, and then the VE, YND voters can kind of overrule their decisions. So that's kind of like how we structured the DAO. We built that on top of the Aragon V2 stack. I'm a big fan of Aragon. I really liked how they built their stack, because it's this kind of open source code base that everybody again can see. And we're building different modules on Aragon, and everybody can use Aragon. So it's again the similar stack how we built YieldNest, where it's like, hey, this is the max LRT products with different underlying strategies, open source, everybody to use. Also, the governance stack is built in a similar manner, but then in collaboration with Aragon.
I like that a lot. It's kind of like automated delegation. As the quote unquote business scales, you automatically spin up new like teams to manage stuff. That's kind of a cool way to like scale your organization.
That obviously is a progressive route to fully get to completely autonomous, like AI driven, complete autonomous vaults, right? But there is the architecture has this very good in mind. So there's a lot of thinking behind every of these moves, and there's this kind of like forward think, right? So we're building infrastructure that works today, but is designed to also be capable and flexible enough to adapt and adjust to any of the future possible directions that it might have to take. Because there's a lot of unknowns on this AI revolution or DeFi in general.
Yeah, best to remain like flexible in that sense. And I guess in terms of getting to that point, what do you think is the number one thing that is holding you guys back from getting to that like 10 billion TVL, and you've got multiple sub DAOs spun up? What do you think is holding you guys back from that?
Yeah, so I think it's general DeFi sentiment and adoption, right? Like when you talk with people, DeFi is super risky and stuff, and it could be, right? But I would make the argument that banks are more risky. You know, I live in drive a lot, and let's say, what would you trust more? I trust USDC more than I trust a Hong Kong bank account or something.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's funny, it's ironic because actually USDC, it depegged like 2 years ago because of a bank. Because a bank went under.
Yeah, it's not the best example actually, because USDC is just, it's not really a crypto thing. It's more like a centralized CeFi thing, right? So
yeah, or like DAI, yeah.
Yeah. These things, that's hard analogies, right? But I would trust some things in crypto more than I trust, let's say, things in certain CeFi sectors, right?
Yeah.
Hong Kong or Thailand or other different jurisdictions. I don't know, like if I would park $2 million there, but parking $2 million on chain, I would feel more safe because I can see the protocol, I can inspect it, and especially with the YieldNest max out default, you know there's these constant monitoring as well, right?
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, I mean, associated with that, I also saw that I think you guys have like TVL caps on some of your max LRT vaults at the moment. Is that due to like room and strategies, because as you get more capital, it's harder to get the best returns, or is there another reason for that?
Yeah, so basically we started with YieldNest is the only one that has a cap currently. The rest are free floating.
Okay.
Because of YieldNest, we need to adjust sometimes the strategy. So if we would get like 1 million ETH inflow, like how would we handle that with the current strategy?
Yeah.
So we need to be like sure, like okay, it's close to the cap. Should we lift it or not? And it's also a soft cap, right? So it's not really that big of an issue, but it's more like, hey guys, let's please not deposit 1 million in this. Especially in the beginning when we were trying new strategies, we're like, hey, this is the first release of the max LRT vault, right? The other vaults were more like LRT vault or native, restaking, which is kind of endless capacity, right? Where this vault had a bit of more capacity issues, but right now we added it to 5,000 ETH, and I think we almost reached it. So right now we're already ready for a higher inflow there. We kind of keep the cap; it's almost hit. So another 500 ETH, and then the cap gets hit. So actually we're now ready to accept more, and then soon we're going to lift the caps. I think also because we are planning our TGE soon, and I just kind of want to, because we now have a point system. But I always say that the ghosts of Satoshi are hunting me for my point system because it's not something that I really like. But I think that having a token eventually is easier because we built all this technology to do tokens, right? It's better to have a token than instead of just points. So at some point we will transition to a token, right? So that's why now it's time for, it's less moments before TGE, and we want to distribute our governance power. We need to find that flywheel to be like, all right, so we have these architectures. This is our stack. This is our DAO. Here's some AI that you can talk to if you want to learn more, right? Like this will all be deployed, right? And then it's like, all right, then there's a token to incentivize behavior. I think incentivizing behavior with points at some point, no pun intended, will become a little bit too much like, yeah, but how much is it? And, actually also all these point systems are not really trustless because most of our point system is actually, we went a little bit overboard with the point system because it's without a database. We did all on-chain events logging, right? Oh. But a lot of point systems are just a database somewhere where somebody probably just prints more points, AWS. Right? That's defeats the point.
No, 100%. And I mean, yeah, also tokens obviously more composable with stuff on chain and everything with that. And also, yeah, I think in some sense having like caps on the vaults, we actually did that. I built a DeFi protocol way back in, I think like 3-4 years ago. We put caps on our vaults and it seemed like it almost increased the demand of the product because people were like, we need to get in. So we would like open it up and then it would fill up within like a minute because people were like botting it and stuff like that. So yeah, I think in some sense it also adds like some sort of like urgency and like mystique around like getting in the vault. So yeah, that's sort of an ancillary benefit of that.
It's a bit of both, right? But in this case, it was a functional element to it.
Yeah, definitely.
And there's also all these other elements. I do think at some point with DeFi, it's, as I said, like with agent to agent, agents don't really care about these emotional things, right? So that's why
That's true. Yeah. When it's users, then maybe it works, but agents, yeah, they're just underwriting logically.
yeah. And I think that at some point that is also a good thing, that we get more
Yeah.
agents and then humans can, start to touch grass maybe at some point. I don't know.
Yeah. Hopefully. I mean, it sort of removes the hype of crypto, which is like, users are using whatever protocol, whatever chain. It's just the hype cycle of the moment. It sort of transitions back to who's actually shipping and who's got the best returns and yield opportunities. And those are the people who will get allocated capital. And I think that overall for the system will just be much better. I think it accelerates the sort of vampire attack that you speak of on CeFi. If we really get that going, I think it'll be a very positive cycle.
Stop staking or stop using
Yeah.
centralized financial structures because you're killing innovation, killing babies. Stop killing babies. You need to stake in a new system where you're actually helping innovation and people thrive and people to innovate, and you motivate new financial structures, right? And eventually that's all better for humanity, right? I think at the end of the line, it's better to get rid of all these weird financial structures. At the end of the day, money is politics. If we can still have money but less politics, I think that's better.
Let's hope. Let's hope that we can. I mean, if we're going to achieve that in any way, it's going to be because of blockchain and DeFi. So let's hope. And AI agents as well. So I think the intersection is coming together. It seems like we're approaching some sort of financial singularity moment. Let's see what happens. I'm excited for it. But yeah, to close it out, is there anything that you guys are working on right now that you guys are excited about that maybe you could talk about?
Yes, I'm super excited about our YieldNest that's coming out soon. I'm a big fan of Frax Finance, and Sam Kazanian from Frax is also an investor into YieldNest. And basically, how it's looking right now, I think Frax is going to get its fat master account, right? Yeah. I think it's going to happen. So that means we will get a DeFi protocol that has a master account at the Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know when is the last time you deposited money in the fat master account, because you have that legal option. Yeah. You don't have to put your money into a bank. If you put your money into a bank, you basically agree that they're going to lend it out, and fractional reserve lend it out like 5 times or something. Yeah. It's insanity. It's insanity that we actually allow this. So with this kind of structure, there's a fat master account, and then instead of having your money into a centralized financial bank and stuff, you can have it in the Federal Reserve where you earn 5%, right? Obviously, you want to be the most capital efficient. So what is YieldNest doing? We're working with Frax, we're working with Curve, we're working with all these blue chips, where we would be then building a stable coin where it's rebalancing between different DeFi components, and it's also the easiest to kind of understand. So you have, let's say, there is certain lending and borrowing markets, or there is an FX protocol or hypernative where you could lend your stablecoins out and get a fee for the trading or underwriting of the trades, right? That's one option. And then with all the risk parameters in place, or you can say, well, I want to put my money in some sort of a money market fund, right? Where this on DeFi, that's based on an automated market maker or things like that, LP pools. Or if those yields at some point go down, which we saw in previous more bear cycles, you could switch it to a fat master account. So then at the end of the day, it becomes this reflexive system where, well, if the CeFi yields are better, then the money just moves to a more CeFi-like RWA-like system. If the DeFi yields are better, it moves back into DeFi. And
that's really cool,
that's
because
it's building with YieldNestDX.
Yeah. I mean, that's really cool because it's almost like dragging CeFi into DeFi and allowing that sort of layer to become a part of the composability that we all know and love with DeFi. So yeah, that's actually pretty huge. So I'm excited to see that come out for Frax, and then obviously what you guys are integrating with it as well. And I know also you guys mentioned cross-chain. Are you guys in the works on cross-chain? What chains are you guys already supporting?
Yes. Like we have Layer 0 fully live and ready already for 3 months. But I do hope that the cross-chain usability and FX, I think as all the DeFi builders know, it's quite a pain in the ass, because then, hey, I integrated Layer 0, we have that script ready, you can already go to Stargate and you can see YNEVX, YNEVE, YNBeam, BTCX, they're all there. We can bridge them over, but now it's like, okay, we now need to form the incentive structures, and then we need to also transport the fundamental rate to the other chains. But that all should be done actually this week. So we're working on that, and obviously other things going. But before we plan any TGE, we want to have that fully finished. So we want to have all the multiple chains, and we're starting probably with Base, Arbitrum, and Inc. I think that's where we're going to start to not make it too crazy. And then eventually it's any EVM compatible chain. And in the future, we could also bridge whatever chain that we see as safe, or where we see yields, right? So basically the max LRT vaults will bridge any strategy anywhere, and it will get the highest risk adjusted return for you. When we see a high yield on Solana or high yield on Barra chain, you're going to go there, go to farm, and then we settle it back to your preferred like settlement layer chain. And in my case, it is ETH layer 1. That's where I feel most secure. And we bring back the yields there, or we could even do another product on a Sonic, for example, if we want to. But for now, as I said, we want to keep it very simple and straightforward. And later we're going to expand more product ranges there as well.
Well, that's awesome, dude. Yeah, I mean, a lot of projects are moving cross-chain. I think it's another step, right? It's another step in the UX of crypto, is just abstracting out all the networks that everything is deployed on and bringing it all together in one application like you guys are doing now. So
I think ETH layer 1 DeFi is still the best, right? Like, of course, there's a lot of shiny new objects, as I said at the beginning, right? So yes, there is a lot of like the other yields on other chains are high, but that is because they want to attract liquidity. But at the end of the day, if those incentives stops, the liquidity moves back to ETH layer 1, because that's where you have a lot of this organic flows, you have a lot of this hardened infrastructure. So that ETH layer 1 would be the base layer, right, for most DeFi, I think, and it will stay like that. And these other layers will function as more specialized layers for certain high frequency trading or for certain special NFT marketplaces or whatever, right? But the core DeFi will stay to layer 1, I think.
Yeah, I mean, in that sense, it's almost like you just go collect the arbitrage opportunity on these L2s, on these other networks, and then bring it back to ETH, back to the home of DeFi.
And eventually, my main goal would be with this is to make a price settlement happen on chain, right? Price discovery needs to happen on chain. And ideally, when the ETH layer 1 says that Bitcoin is, let's say, $100,000, or when ETH is $10,000, if ETH layer 1 says that, that is the truth of the system, right? If you get there, then ETH layer 1 achieves, in my opinion, the ultimate achievement and goal that should strive against, right? And I think that for most DeFi that's the case. But then you also have BTC DeFi with YieldBTCX or on BNB. So we offer these different settlement layers. That's my personal opinion, but I still offer also settlement layers on Bitcoin or on BNB. People want to do that, and we bring the yield there as well, right? So the protocol is completely chain agnostic. Myself, I'm a big believer in ETH L1 DeFi, which is a bit contrarian belief, I guess.
Well, maybe you're just vampiring all that capital from the other chains and pushing them towards the ETH strategy.
That's what I've been doing all along with my personal portfolio as well, right? Like I make money and I go back to ETH L1 because I don't trust with big amounts of money. I don't trust these other layers yet, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, dude, I think we had an amazing conversation. Really cool stuff that you guys are doing at YieldNest, and I think we're starting to see the actual application of AI and the intersection with DeFi. So I think that's really exciting stuff. I mean, just to wrap it up, is there anywhere we can send folks if they want to check out YieldNest, if they want to try out some of the vaults, some of the strategies? Where should we send them?
Yeah. The best way to find us is if you go to YieldNest.finance. That's our website. Always make sure to check the right website. And then also the good way to find us is on YieldNest or on any other of the social media. So the best way to follow all the announcements would be to follow YieldNest on Twitter, probably in the show notes below, and check out our website.
Awesome. Well, appreciate you having on, dude. And we'll catch up with you. But yeah, dude, thanks for having the time.
Yeah, thanks, Amadeo.
Likewise. Thank you, guys. Talk to you soon. It was an amazing conversation. Thank you.